that is going. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar that we are doing with our World Business Partner SITA on a report that they just released a few days ago, and they are going to share some of the results with us today. We're going to give a couple or a few seconds for the participants to join, and we will start. Okay, I think for the benefit of time, we can start. As mentioned, good morning, everybody, for joining us today in this webinar that we are going to do in collaboration with our World Business Partner SITA, and where they are going to share the results of the IT insight research that explore emerging IT trends and the role of technology in supporting aviation industry. They are going to share some interesting insights about digitalization and as a key competitiveness factor for airlines and for both airlines and airport to strive the seamless end-to-end travel journey that we have discussed many times among our members. So for that, we are going to have today Dr. Carlos Caduoca, Head of Strategy and Business Transformation in SITA Americas, who is going to present these results of the insight research. And as you know, in our webinars, we always have a simultaneous interpretation. To listen this presentation in Spanish, you have to click to the globe icon that you will find in the Zoom menu and select the channel of your preference, either English or Spanish. We always suggest to select the option mute the original audio. So in that case, you will listen to the interpreter instead of both voices overlap. So if you prefer to listen to only one voice, you should select mute the original audio. And for the Q&A session, as you know, and you can notice, the chat function is not enabled. So please, in case you have any question for Dr. Carlos, please send your questions to the email address that you find on the screen, info@aci-lac.aero, and we are going to make the questions by the Q&A session that is going to take place at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, thank you very much, Dr. Carlos Caduoca, for taking the time to prepare the slide and to share the results of this interesting report.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you for the ACI LAC for organizing this opportunity for us, this event, the webinar, so we can actually share with you the 2022 Air Transport IT Insights. So my name is Carlos Caduoca, and I'll be presenting and your host today in this webinar. So if you go to the next slide, here is, as Francisco already mentioned, we are sharing with you the insights of the research that was done in between August and October 2022. And one of the key insights is that digitalization is really key to competitiveness and success factor for airlines and airports, because as they strive to that seamless end-to-end journey. So the customer centricity, the journey of the passenger and technology is there to support that delivery of that sort of experience. In the survey, we conducted the survey with interviews with 180 IT decision makers from leading airlines and airports around the world. Basically, it covers 45 countries, and those airlines and airports, they represent about a quarter of the global passenger traffic of 2019. So it is very insightful information that we would like to share with you. So if we go to the next slide, the air transport industry is undergoing a continuous transformation, and we're seeing, as a result of the pandemic, see our business evolving, adapting, and really building that resilience and transforming itself. So the industry, as we continue to evolve and we continue to transform, innovation is going to be key to shape the new era of travel. And for this reason, IT has become a critical component of every part of our business. So let's go to the next slide. So innovation and automation will shape a new era of travel. This is without doubt, and we've seen for all of the went through during the COVID, the contactless, the physical distancing, and everything that airports, airlines, and their partners brought in to make it that sort of a journey safe and travel. And some of those are staying with us. And airports and airlines are really innovating with partners. One of the things that we believe that COVID brought was a strong collaboration within the ecosystem. And today, airports are innovating with partners. They are implementing key technologies to help streamline operations around the passenger management and scalability based on demand. And as we see the fluctuation of passenger volume with peaks and troughs, so it's very important that the airport built that flexibility, that scalability that can be matched on demand. And given the unsettled nature of this volatility and changing the external factors, the airports, they must stay agile and innovate to future-proof that business. And this is something that it's that part of that transformation is through that sort of a future-proofing, being able to build and create that agile and flexible organization. So what the survey is going to show is that we'll be looking into the next 3 years, how airports are going to bring this agility, the scalability, and operational efficiency, because they are critical consideration for the airport's business. They are evolving, the environment of this is changing, and is also the introduction of new technologies. And this is where we're going to see what are the technologies that airports will be looking into the future, what are the things that airports are going to invest on or technology to basically to meet the current demand that they have in their business. So the next slide is, as I mentioned, technology is the foundation of that transformation, and IT has become a critical component of every part of the business. And this is what we're going to show now in the next slide, is how airports are investing on technology and what the focus are going to be for the next coming years. So let's go with so from an investment, so let's look at what the airports are investing on. Go to the next slide. Here you will see from the IT spend, IT and technology spend into 2022, we saw a small decrease in technology and down to about 5.6% compared to 6.15% in 2021. One of the interesting things is that the CapEx is lower compared to operational sort of the OpEx is 3.34, meaning so the airports are continue to maintaining that sort of systems that they have, and they're actually reducing a little bit investment on capital expenditure. But the good thing is that the airports continue investing in IT and telecommunications. So this is a very good news. And if we look at the overall as an industry, it's about as a whole, the industry is about, it's investing about 6.8 billion in 2022. So the upside is that they are investing, and I think this is a very good news for the airports, because they are continuing to evolve and transforming that business. Just on a side note, airlines basically had a similar view. So they are basically spending on OPEX similar. OPEX is slightly higher than CAPEX. And the overall investment from an airline perspective, it's about 37 billion compared to 32 billion in 2021. The next slide, please. So these are some of the predictions. So we looked at 2021 is the first block on your left-hand side. And then we go to the expected in 2023, and in the middle, the plan in 2022. So what we're seeing is the IT spend predicted is very cautious prediction, but 2023 will see an increase, and 75% of those anticipate an increase on that spend. So and I think this is very good news. It demonstrates that airports are going to leverage technology to help them to meet the increasing traffic demands. And that one of the things that we're seeing post-COVID is the rapid increase in passenger volume. So to meet those traffic demands, so technology is going to help them, and airports will invest mostly to provide this seamless passenger experience. And as the business adjusts to the post-COVID era, but ultimately is investments to deliver the optimal and the best passenger experience. Let's go and have a look in terms of what the priorities are going to be. So if you go to the next slide, and if you go to the next one, so here is, we're looking at the priorities from the CIOs. Cybersecurity is very, very high, and followed by self-service, cloud services. Then we have, those are very high priorities. And I think this is one of the reasons we can see that increase is because data is driving a lot of our businesses. Self-service is something that is always being a way for passengers to be taking control of that journey. And throughout the COVID and the pandemic, we saw that passengers were actually reluctant to be in contact with others, with agents. Therefore, self-service become more of the mainstream for them. And then that will continue, and passengers will still want to be in control of the journey. So self-service is very high, as so as cloud, because of the putting infrastructure on the cloud, it becomes cheaper. It's more on demand for the airports to deliver services, deliver technology. In addition, so there are all other 4 areas that will help them, the airports, to become more agile in their business, and they are business intelligence. Business intelligence because you have insights about your business. You can determine what your peaks in your trough. You can determine the implications of congestions, delays. So you as a business will have a lot more insights in terms of managing your operations more efficiently with data, with information. Common use infrastructure will continue to be high, and common use is something that facilitates. And if we look at the, again, examples of the pandemics, when airports had to close down infrastructure, moving different terminals into let's say, from multiple terminals to single terminal operations because of low traffic, low demand. A common use infrastructure would enable the airports to have that agility to be able to satisfy all of the airlines' requirements in handling passengers, as well as creating an infrastructure that the airport could actually have a better control, keep it safe, and while utilizing the rest of the infrastructure. And common use allows them to give that flexibility in that operations. Touchless solutions we've seen, and it will continue to be one of the residues or one of the legacies of the COVID, of the pandemics. Today, also, everything that we do is on our mobile phone. And it's something that if you have the ability to do so, probably passengers will choose that option of having touchless solutions. And then from a passenger's perspective, the mobile and digital services, they account for large investments of the CIO, enable passengers to use their mobile device to consume digital services at their own sort of leisure and using their own devices. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So from a priorities, I've mentioned it's in the previous slide as well, but what we're seeing is that compared to 2021, we still be seeing BI, data exchange technologies, and biometric ID management having a major programs with about 45% of airports saying so. And this is interesting because when we look at, I've mentioned why BI is important, data exchange, because a lot of our business are become data driven. And then you have biometric ID management and the seamless part of that journey, the touchless using biometric to go through some of the different touch points that the passenger has to go through, allows them to have that touchless and allows them to be very much in control of that journey. So we will see that it's very much in sync in terms of the investments on BI, on the data exchange, and the biometric sort of ID management. But also looking into the future, there are two technologies where airports are going to increase their plans to improve efficiency. 5G communications network. And interesting enough, the 5G communications, despite some challenges that it has been faced in terms of potential interference, but 5G is going to be critical as technologies start evolving and airport wants to implement delivering autonomous vehicles, robots, for example, which require a very low latent network to operate on. So 5G is going to be something that will be needed as part of that infrastructure. Then interactive navigation and wayfinding, it's almost doubled. And I think, again, is the fact that you are passengers, because of the COVID, they want to navigate things more efficiently, using their own device like mobile phones, or using the wayfinding solutions to get from A to B, or get into places where they could find what they're looking for at the airport. So that interactiveness, the wayfinding capability is going to be something that is going to be part of that investments from a CIO's perspective. And the other thing is, one with the legacies of COVID, again, has been the passengers' needs for digital services, right? So we become, as a consumer, as travelers, we want to be in charge, we want to be in control, we want to find information as quickly as possible. We want to be able to navigate in all the different offers that is available to me as a traveler. And then that is something that airports and airlines are basically looking to it, making sure that, okay, the passengers' needs or the digital needs of those passengers are met. And it really to help them to address some of the things, for example, congestion struggles, avoid queues, long queues, and knowing where to go, bypassing some of those queues by using different channels to be processed, for example. And then one of the last ones, but not the least, the AI remains a high priority. Artificial intelligence is very important and will be very important, because as business evolve, technology evolves, and we're becoming a more data centric, consuming a lot more data. What is going to be important is with business intelligence, but also artificial intelligence, to provide you very advanced insights and advanced analytics and insights about that data. So AI will continue to provide, will be part of that. And in some cases, you'll be seeing AI being used to communicate, to provide information to customers. And this is where we will see that sort of use of technology providing better services using artificial intelligence. So let's go into the ID management that we talked about, one of the priorities. So in ID management, if you look at the next slide, please, here you see ID management where the biometrics of borders and boarding is being very high in terms of demand and in terms of priorities. Self-service will continue to be implemented also because of all these changes that we're seeing in the passengers' sort of a behavior. And I'll repeat myself, post-COVID is one of the legacies. Self-service is something that airports will be looking into it. Airlines as well will be looking into self-service. And also because self-service also allows you to streamline the processes. You can segregate what the passengers are going to be and give them, the passenger, the freedom to choose how they want to be processed. And that is something that is going to be very important from a passenger experience perspective. But equally, it's going to be important to implement a secure single biometric sort of identification. Today, you have to go through different touch points using a biometric ID. You'll be able to navigate through different touch points without having to present your passport, your boarding passes. So as your ID becomes your passport, it becomes your tickets in a way, so you can actually navigate across those processes. And the other one that we're seeing is the enrollment at the airport. Passengers will be enrolled at the airport. Investments are looking into how do you enable that passengers to tie in the biometric ID if they, arrive at your airport, haven't done it on their mobile, for example. Enabling the passengers to enroll the biometric is going to be a critical component of that sort of a self-service in terms of allowing the passengers to move through all of those processes. The other areas that we're seeing from a self-service initiatives include the self-boarding gates using biometrics. About 43% of CIOs are looking into that. And then self-boarding gates using biometrics and travel documents. If you travel to some of the airports in the US, you're going through that where boarding gates are basically biometric enabled. So you can go through very quickly. Some gates, for example, are also used for border control. Those facilities that the airport is enabling, is providing both the airlines so they can deliver better service, optimize that sort of processes, and really making that journey as seamless and the best as possible that they could have. So using biometrics to go through the gates, so you don't have to take your boarding passes or everything or anything, is going to be very, it's fast, it's efficient, and touchless, and it enhances that experience as well. But then looking into the future, we'll be looking at the airports are looking into self-check-in. This is something that they will continue to invest. It's quite interesting because you're probably seeing some of the airlines already offer, as you book, depending on the already auto check-in, so the system automatically generates your boarding pass, for example, so you don't have to check in. But then those are, I would say, a part of some of those passengers will have that, and then some of them will still go to the airport to be checked in, and then use self-service as an option. Self-bed drop, 86% of airports are looking into it. And again, it's just the next stage. we've been using mobile phones, online check-in, then the self-service kiosks to print our boarding passes. Now, the next step is to drop your bags. For those passengers who are traveling with bags, so you wanted to be able to go and quickly drop your bag, 3-5 seconds, and then that's it. So you can get your bag out, right? So self-service from a bag drop perspective is something that is going to be very important. Then you have the airport security. There's another steps that is very, very important, and it's a very, I would say, a stressful process is when you go through security, not knowing whether you have to take your belts, you have to take your laptop from a bag, separate your liquids. It is very stressful. So trying to look at and ease that process of the airport security is something that airports are looking into it. Using biometrics for your identification, so you go through some of those steps quickly, as fast as possible. But also from a security perspective, airports are investing on advanced sort of machines that will do the screening of your hand baggage using advanced sort of technology like CT scans that will then help to speed up that process. That, as I said, it can be one of the most stressful sort of points of the passenger journey. Now let's look at the passenger processing. So if it could move the slides to passenger processing, please. The next slide. So here we see where the focus is. Check-in via the kiosk, as I said before, is the self-service element of it is still very high. 96% of airports will have that by 2025. The baggage drop, which is assisted, there will continue to be a priority. Tagging your bags using the kiosks, you basically have the kiosks to generate your bag tag, so you can tag it and simply drop that. The unassisted bag drop, where it's a complete self-service, and then you have the automated border control and self-boarding gate. So this will continue. The passenger journey or the passenger processing, it's about automating how the passenger is checked in, using all the self-service, using the kiosks, using the bag drops, but also there will be a mixture where passengers will still be handled by an agent to do that check-in for exceptions, or even to check in their bags. But it's very much the focus is looking into checking in using the kiosk, printing your bag tags. So it's basically you do all the transactions by yourself and then drop the bags. So the future investment is going to be, as I mentioned in the previous slide, so we're going to do the passenger processing and the bag drop, and then the next is start automating the border control using biometrics and also the self-boarding gates, because this is where another stage where the airports and the airlines in collaboration can actually make that process efficient. You can be able to give that sort of a passengers who traveling, so you don't have to take your boarding pass, you don't have to take your passport again. It's just you stand in and then you go and board the plane, right? So that is, although it may sound very simplistic in terms of what is the issue of getting your passport and your boarding pass, but as you travel, it's the stress. It's, where do you put your boarding pass? Where do you put your passport? If you have multiple connections, have several boarding passes, so you can get flustered because, everybody's behind you. And so that can create a bit of an anxiety, not for long, but it's something that with biometric identification, you can ease that, make it more comfortable for the passenger. And then from an airline perspective, they are investing on the passenger processing. They're continuing to focusing on the web check-in, and it's very much in our report, the insights, we do both airlines and airports, and you'll be able to see, if you're interested in the full report, the airlines basically are very much aligned with the airports in terms of where they're going to invest in terms of passenger processing, where the focus is going to be. There's very good sort of alignment in terms of their focus and priorities. So if you could move to the next slide, please. Business intelligence, and as we go to the next slide, business intelligence is remain a key strategic for airports because they allow the airports to have a better understanding of their business, to be able to predict and to start sort of looking at and minimizing their disruptions. It also allows and gives them, the airport, that agility, the adaptability to the changes, because you'll be able to start looking into potential sort of bottlenecks or challenges that you have during flight delays or stoppage of some of those sort of services. And with that, they are really focusing on BI so that it could have a better asset management and flight operation solutions. And I think this is very important for the airports, because they will be able to have really a much better use of their assets. The other thing that we're looking at from a BI perspective is the prioritization towards the airport collaborative decision making, the ACDM, and also it moving into the direction of a total airport management. Basically, it looks at ACDM is mostly focused on, if you're not familiar with the terminology, ACDM will focus mostly on the air side, the APRM and ATC sort of integration, while the TAM, the total airport management, will also look at into land side as well. So a complete holistic view of the airport operations. And they are looking into that. They'll be looking at how you can actually utilize all the resources, the implications on different parts of the process of airport operations with a better sort of insight using BI. Baggage processing is still a top priority, and we're seeing the reason why you need baggage solutions is basically to tackle mishandling. And for those of you, if you remember last year, had a lot of airlines had challenges with baggage mishandling, particularly in Europe, big cases where, terminal halls or baggage halls loaded with sort of a baggage that actually didn't arrive with a passenger. So baggage processing is going to be very important, how they can actually minimize that sort of the mishandling. And again, one part of the stress of a passenger is making sure that their baggage arrived with them, especially if traveling on holiday. So the other thing is a BI, it's when we look at it from business intelligence initiatives, we're looking at scaling operations up and down. And what we're seeing from the post the pandemic, the COVID, is scaling up the operations where you had suddenly very high peaks and then you had some drops, all because you didn't have the number of resources to meet that sort of a demand. So that understanding a little bit that will start predicting and making decisions, better decisions in terms of how you utilize all the resources, scaling up and down based on information about the operations, and start doing predicting it, how you could respond to those changes more efficiently and more effectively. Just on the side, airlines are looking into implementing BI initiatives as well. And the areas they'll be looking into how to streamline their operations to improve the passenger processing. So let's go to the next slide, please. Disruption management, and as you know, being an airport, I was an airline station manager, so I know how critical, how difficult disruption is, both from an airline perspective, more so from an airport, because all the passengers are there, and then they're always going to blame the airport for not handling that disruption efficiently. So disruption management is very difficult. It requires collaboration between airlines, airports, ground handlers, government agencies, but handling that is require insights. It will require sort of a understanding of what is happening and how you deal with that. Basically looking through, knowing that some disruptions are going to take place, how you could actually start planning, manage that disruption. You cannot avoid disruption, but certainly with technology, with information and collaboration with your key stakeholders, you can manage that disruption more efficiently. The areas that it requires sort of focus on disruption is communication between all of the service providers, mass notification, using and leveraging social media, for example, is areas of investments because it is very critical. Disruption is, at the end of the day, it's about how well the information is communicated to the passengers, to all the different stakeholders. So they all have the same information and they all provide the same sort of a feedback information to the disrupted passengers. So airports also looking into automating that communication, making sure that there is this collaborative sort of a approach where airports basically investing into allowing that sort of a real-time communications and status visibility. Because what happens is, as we work in our respective areas of operations, it becomes very critical. We become isolated. So getting that information and status is going to be very important. And then the last one is part of that disruption management is understanding to be able to simulate the capabilities of the airport for optimal sort of reaction. How do you react to that? And how you created sort of automated predictive alerts, basically start preempting that eventually some events, it will have an implication, it will create a disruption. And then with that, how you can actually start sort of a preempting, looking at the resources availability and start proactively thinking about your disruption management approach. So let's go to innovation. Slide, please. And here is innovation is something that it's driving the changes, is driving the automation, is driving and creating improvements to bring in improvements to the airports and to the airlines. And innovation is gaining traction as a standalone practices. Airports are creating that sort of a CTOs organizations. And because it's going to be very important, it is good to be able to start looking at innovation. So it's now innovation strategies are becoming more mainstream for airports. And the thing about so if you look at the number of airports that have innovation strategy, it has doubled. 92% will have their sort of innovation strategies in place. And this is very, very important because as you start innovating, you start testing some of those solutions, bringing in the concept of fail fast, start fast, fail fast, because it allows you to start trying and testing technology solutions, that innovations that will be important for your business. Innovation is not necessarily just about technology, it's innovation on processing, how you improve your processes. So innovation is very an important area. And from the IT insights, innovation is leveraging technology, but is one of the key messages is that airports are investing in bringing partners. And I think this is very important because you can leverage what other people or other businesses do better, and that focus on enabling what they do at their core technology companies and working with you to find solutions. And this partnership is going to be very important. And it's one of the things that we found that prior to the pandemic, the innovation was limited to in-house development. And like I said, the pandemic brought in the need to expand and then to collaborate. And I think this is, to me, it's very important. It's something that I encourage you to have in your organization, innovation practice. because it is going to be very important. Airlines are basically saying the same thing, and they will have 87% of them will have an innovation strategy in place. When we go to the next slide, here is, we're talking about the partners, right? So how partnership is going to be important and which areas of the technologies they are actually partnering to find innovative solutions. Is in biometrics, so 41% are looking at partners to bring biometric solutions. Data exchange technologies, especially, and 35%, and then finding way and identifying wayfinding technologies at 33, and then looking at a positive outlook for 5G. So this is bringing in partners to do that. The other area is AI, and this is an area of growth from an airport perspective, and it will continue to be for the next 3 years. So we're looking at biometrics, data exchange, 5G, and then AI as, as areas of collaboration with innovation partners. So we go to the next slide, which is coming to an end. We're going to talk about sustainability. And here is, if you go to the next slide, please. Sustainability is an area that is a topic that we brought in our IT insights, because we hear from our customers the implications of sustainability on their business. And then here, we're trying to understand what are the initiatives that our airport bringing in terms of sustainability. And what we're seeing is that there was significant progress in IT-specific sustainability initiatives. Is basically looking into recycling equipment, looking into the IT life cycle, reusing and remarketing it. And I think this is very important, because elements of the sustainability is the circular economy, how you actually is going to repurpose a percentage of the material that really can be reused, and ideally a very small percentage of that become waste. So it's very positive. It's a very good message that we're going to bring to other businesses and basically to our traveling passengers, that okay, airports are doing their best to play a positive role in fighting climate change through sustainability initiatives. The areas that the airport's looking into to reduce that sort of an impact is going to be into printing practices, through bringing in more sustainable sort of practices around, basically they reduce the paper consumption and favoring sort of more environmentally responsible materials for printing. This is, again, very small, minor things, but very important that you start reducing that, using sort of bringing in sort of different practices in terms of how you minimize and how you can contribute with that. And in this case is paper consumption. Building on the infrastructure is another green initiative, where they're looking at 93% of airports undertaking create green spaces using natural light and renewable energy by 2025. And this is very, very important. I've been talking to a customer this morning, and really, really very, very an airport. And it's been really, really important. That to me is very, very gratifying to see that, the efforts on bringing in renewable energy, and I think this is the way to go. So this is areas where the airport are going to go. Green initiatives is looking at creating green spaces using natural lights, renewable energies. It's something that is going to be very important. Interesting enough, sustainability is going to be very critical when we see airports, for example, issuing green bonds that are related to their sustainability efforts, so they can actually borrow money from the market, so that they can actually continue in building that sort of infrastructure and development through those initiatives. So as we become a greener, it becomes even more sellable, I think, from an airport perspective. And looking to the future, looking at sustainable IT basically looking at how we do using technology or data to look at how we can airports can reduce fuel consumption, how they can improve air quality and water management. And as they evolve that infrastructure, airports want to become smarter with building technology, automation to reduce CO2 footprint. Is basically technology is available for them, for airports basically to measure, to monitor, and then to create insight in terms of how is that carbon footprint. So this is very positive. Airlines are going in the same direction. It is very important that collectively we address the impact of our industry on climate change, and IT sustainability initiatives are very critical. With this, I'll finish my presentation, and I think we're going to open for questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Very interesting. Just a quick reminder on the Q&A sessions. As you can notice, the chat function is not enabled. So in case you want to make any questions to Carlos, please send it to the email address that you will find on the screen, info@aci-lac.aero. We have a couple of questions that already have arrived, and we'll start with the first one. And what is your view on digitalization and digital transformation?
This is a path that it's all airports and airlines are going through. Digital transformation was accelerated through as a result of the pandemic. This is not going to change, and we will continue to digitize and automating a lot of those processes. And with that, we start bringing in new technologies. As I mentioned, it's really aligned with what the IT survey said is going to be on implementing biometrics, ID management, business intelligence. So these are elements of that digital transformations that the airports will go through and will continue to evolve their business through that transformation of their business.
Thank you, Carlos. I have another one on cyber that says why cyber is so important, or that important for airports and of course for airlines, and your views on that.
Well, it's when we look at the evolution of our business, so we're looking at and I mentioned during the presentation, our business has now become data driven. A lot of that, there is a lot of information. We are exchanging a lot more information with data, and systems are being implemented that would generate a lot of that. And it creates an important element that it's cybersecurity becomes vulnerable to cyber attacks. And I think this is very important that when we think about technology, we'd also think about cyber and how we protect our business from these sort of attacks that can, disrupt our businesses. There are cases where flight information display systems were hacked, and then they put information, misleading information, all very gory, sort of a not very pleasant information on screens. So so this is something that is going to be an area of vulnerability, and then we need to make sure that collectively we work towards finding best practices that collectively as an industry with technology partners, we find and making sure that we are as secure as possible, right? Because it is going to be a very difficult position to be completely hack-proof, but certainly working collectively, working together, we will find a solution to make sure that we protected our business, we protect the industry.
Thank you, Carlos. We just received a question from Peru, and it's asking precisely on digital transformation, but this question comes from an airport network that manage airports in small cities in the countryside in the country, where the question is, what is your view on smaller airports that perhaps has a few operations per day on digital transformation? What should be the approach for them?
I think today with technology, and that is something that is a very dear subject to me. It's sort of the small regional airports, because they tend to be neglected because they have small operations. Today, technology is available to make everything that you see today, a large airport, to have all of the technology from a resource management, from a business intelligence, that can be deployed to smaller airports in a small scale, with solutions that can be put it on a cloud, for example. So you don't have to invest on a very heavy sort of infrastructure at your airport. And I think if you are managing a group of small airports, then you create a central hub, so you can actually monitor the operations of all the smaller airports that you have. So it is possible, and I do believe that it's now the technology that exists, we should be approaching, and we should be automating all of these smaller airports with technology, so that airport managers those airports can have all the information that they need to make the decisions that they require. Because regardless whether you have one flight a day or 100 flight a day, you still have to manage that process. You still need to make sure that passengers are in and out in a safe and secure manner. The airlines and everybody else are delivering that part. So they shouldn't be I would say not automated because of that. And I think this is, like I said, technology is there, and we should be working, technology partners, innovation. And I think that's when your partnership will come in hand, because they will then find the right solution to your requirements.
Thank you, Carlos. I have another one, and regarding sustainability. We always hear about, for example, in the case of airports, carbon management, waste management, circular economy, but you have touched sustainability with a different approach. So what are your views on sustainability from the IT sector?
It's interesting, because sustainability is going to be a hot topic. Whether you are here in Latin America, in Europe, or in Asia, sustainability is going to be critical. Technology will help you as the airport operator to have a better understanding on what is your CO2 emissions in terms of the level, scope 1, and then scope 2, and then also to understand all the emissions that are generated by the third party that you have no control of. Technology should be one that allows you, enables you to understand those, to be able to, one, to have a baseline of those emissions, then be able to, for you to manage that, and then generate reports so you can actually work collectively, collaboratively with all the different stakeholders or the entities that are emitting a higher level sort of a quantity of CO2, to work with them in trying to find solutions to mitigate, to minimize that. Because ultimately airports will have to be accountable for what the CO2 that is generated at the airport, be it whatever they have under their control or not under that, or emitted by the other parties. So they still have to go through it. And there are lots of efforts. There are some best practices like ACI with carbon accreditation, with ACERT. There are also technology that can help you to deal with that. And I think at the end of the day, sustainability, it will be an area where you can play your role, do the good for the environment, to the community, because sustainability, and let's face it, is not going to be just about CO2. It's about water management, is about waste management, it's about all the other pollutants, noise. So it's sustainability we'll have to start looking at as a whole, not just from a CO2 perspective, but technology will play an important role, because a lot of those sort of different stakeholders or contributors of the emissions will have to be reported. You have to be able to monitor, and then the only way for you to do it ideally is through automation, through sensors that are actually implemented at the airport. So from my perspective is sustainability is going to be an important topic, and I salute all of the airports that have and started embarking on that sort of a sustainability journey. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Carlos. And we have a last one, which is, I think, is not going to be easy to answer. It comes from Panama, and it's a question and a comment about why not creating a plan for cybersecurity for all the IT and communication systems that support airports, and in some way with this plan having a base or standard that for airports and airlines to follow. I assume it's more on the regulatory side, and I know ICAO is working on that, but from your perspective from a provider, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, and we're seeing more and more sort of airports that are looking into what they consider a critical or national critical infrastructure, for example, an airport, and then they have, from a government perspective, from a regulatory perspective, any provider at those critical infrastructures that have to comply to very specific standards, and we have to meet certain criteria. So I think the criteria already exist. It's more of how that is being brought in together with the regulatory sort of environment, right? And I think this is very important, looking at what ICAO is going to do, working with the industry body like the ACI to create and to help to define those standards that is going to be very important. I think that there is actually already a paper on cyber by ACI, and this is the path, this is the way, but it's definitely is going to be a requirement that the industry bodies work with regulatory to make sure that those practices are consistent across, right? So yeah, I think that's my view. And it is, like you said, Francisco, is that it is a work that is required a lot more from the regulatory and industry bodies to come together to define those standards.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you for the reminder. It is true we have many documentation or handbooks and publication on cybersecurity. Please, those the members that are participating in this webinar, please do not hesitate to contact us for any information about these publications, so we can share it with you. We are almost at the end. We really want to thank you, Dr. Kaduoka, for your time, for sharing the result of this interesting survey that you have done. We, as all the webinar from ACI, we are going to share the recording with all the people who have registered, and also we are going to share the presentation. And in case you have questions on the webinar that perhaps couldn't address during this hour, please send it to us, and we will share it with Carlos. So without if we have any questions, I just want to say thank you again for your time, and for the rest, you are going to receive the recording as well as the slides in the later today. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, everybody.